The hidden origins of the Emerald Tablet, a mystery across time. When Isaac Newton, the man who discovered gravity, spent long nights hunched over his desk, he wasn't only calculating the movement of planets, he was also translating a small, mysterious text that he believed held the key to unlocking the universe itself. This text was the Emerald Tablet. Think about it. Newton, the father of modern science, one of the greatest minds of all time, copied line by line a fragment attributed to a mythical sage called Hermes Trismegistus. Why would a man of science devote himself to what many would dismiss as ancient mysticism? Because hidden inside those few sentences was the promise of ultimate transformation, both of matter and of the human spirit. Historians estimate that the Emerald Tablet first appeared around the 6th to 8th century, possibly translated from older Arabic manuscripts. Yet legends place its origin thousands of years earlier, in Egypt, connected to Hermes Trismegistus, a figure merging the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. This dual heritage gave birth to Hermeticism, a stream of thought so powerful it shaped philosophy, alchemy, and even the Renaissance. So the question you're probably asking is, how could a single tablet survive across centuries, whispered about in secret, quoted by alchemists, revered by occultists, and even respected by scientists? The answer is unsettling. It never really vanished. It kept resurfacing, adapting like a living code. The problem for us today is that most people hear about the Emerald Tablet only as a mystical relic, a curiosity of history. But what if I told you that every major civilization that encountered its teachings used it to explain the same eternal mystery? How the invisible becomes visible, how thought shapes matter, how the universe mirrors the human mind. The Greeks used it to frame metaphysics, the Arabs to refine alchemy, and the Europeans to birth modern science. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, saw in its words the blueprint for individuation, the process by which we integrate shadow and light within ourselves. Suddenly, the tablet isn't just about ancient chemistry. It's about you, your struggles, your need to unify the fractured parts of your being. One of the most striking aspects of the Emerald Tablet is its brevity. While sacred texts like the Bible stretch across thousands of pages, the tablet condenses its wisdom into just 13 lines. That paradox creates a tension. How could so few words ignite entire traditions of philosophy and science? The brevity itself is a challenge. It forces you to wrestle with each phrase, to discover meaning layer by layer. For example, the famous sentence, "as above, so below," has been quoted in countless books, films, and even modern motivational speeches. But originally, it wasn't just a poetic metaphor. It was a key to understanding the hidden symmetry between the cosmos and the human soul. You may feel skeptical. Can a fragment of text really contain so much? Let's look at the evidence. Newton's translation of the Emerald Tablet still sits today in King's College, Cambridge. It's a historical fact, not a myth. Paracelsus, the Renaissance physician who revolutionized medicine, claimed the tablet taught him how to treat diseases by balancing invisible energies in the body. Even the American founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson were indirectly influenced through Enlightenment thinkers who drew from Hermetic traditions. That's not fantasy. That's the genealogy of ideas that built the modern world. But here is where the mystery deepens. No one knows where the original tablet is. Some say it was carved on a green stone found in the tomb of Hermes Trismegistus himself. Others claim it was discovered in Egypt and hidden away in Alexandria, lost when the Great Library burned. Arab sources say it was revealed to a mystic in a cave, then translated and guarded by scholars. Which story is true? Perhaps all of them carry fragments of truth. And isn't that what the tablet itself suggests? That reality is never fixed but layered, mirrored, and transformed depending on who is ready to see. If you feel a kind of pull right now, that's not by accident. You've probably asked yourself the same questions. Is there a hidden order behind the chaos of life? Is there a single principle that ties together your struggles, your triumphs, your inner contradictions? The Emerald Tablet claimed to have that answer, and that's why minds as brilliant as Newton or Jung couldn't let it go, because it wasn't just about turning lead into gold, it was about turning confusion into clarity, despair into meaning, mortality into something resembling eternity. And this is only the beginning. The origins of the tablet aren't just about history, they're about the story of human longing itself. Every generation has searched for a key, a single phrase that makes sense of it all. The Emerald Tablet dared to say, it exists, hidden yet eternal, waiting for those ready to read between the lines. In 1943, Carl Jung, already famous for shaping modern psychology, confessed something unusual. He said that the phrase, "as above, so below," from the Emerald Tablet was not just philosophy, it was the very foundation of how the human psyche mirrors the cosmos. He saw in those 4 words a bridge between science, spirituality, and psychology. Now pause on that for a second. A man who mapped out the unconscious, who gave us archetypes and the idea of shadow, claimed that this single line was a universal law. It wasn't just mystics or alchemists repeating it. It was thinkers who changed how we see ourselves. That should make you wonder, what is so powerful about this phrase that it keeps returning across history? As above, so below is the most quoted sentence from the Emerald Tablet, and yet most people never truly ask what it means. At its core, it suggests that the macrocosm, the stars, the universe, the infinite, reflects the microcosm, which is you, your mind, your body, your spirit. The tension comes from this question. If the universe and the self mirror each other, then every answer you seek outside already exists within. But here's the twist. Science is beginning to echo this ancient claim. Physicists studying fractals, for instance, show us repeating patterns that scale infinitely, from galaxies down to the smallest molecules. Neuroscientists point out that the structure of the brain's neural networks resembles the web of galaxies in the observable universe. These aren't poetic guesses, they're measurable, visual parallels. Suddenly, as above, so below doesn't sound like mysticism, it sounds like a map of reality. Think about your own life. How often do you sense that your inner state shapes your outer reality? When you're in turmoil, doesn't everything outside seem chaotic too? When you find inner calm, the world appears lighter, opportunities open, relationships improve. The tablet tells us that this isn't just coincidence, it's law. Your personal below reflects the universal above. But here's where many stop, treating it like a motivational quote. The deeper layer is far more demanding. It means responsibility. If the universe reflects you, then the transformation you seek out there begins with transformation in here. This is why alchemists weren't just obsessed with metals. They were obsessed with the soul. Alchemy was always more than chemistry. When an alchemist said he was trying to turn lead into gold, Jung explained that the lead was the heavy unconscious self, burdened by fear and ignorance, while gold was the purified soul, conscious, whole, radiant. The Emerald Tablet encoded this process in miniature. As above, so below was both a promise and a challenge. What you refine inside will appear outside. Paracelsus, the physician alchemist of the Renaissance, believed that illnesses of the body reflected illnesses of the spirit. Healing meant aligning both planes, above and below. In modern terms, this resonates with psychosomatic medicine, where stress, trauma, and emotional conflict manifest physically. Again, the tablet's ancient claim stands validated. Skeptics will argue, but isn't this just projection? Don't we just see what we want to see? That's a fair objection, but evidence keeps stacking up. Quantum physics tells us that observation affects reality. Your act of seeing changes the outcome of an experiment. Doesn't that suggest that consciousness and matter are entangled in ways we barely grasp? The tablet's sentence is not a metaphor, it's an equation. And if that equation is real, then your thoughts, your emotions, your state of being are constantly writing the script of your external world. Now imagine what this means for your struggles. When life feels like a storm, the natural instinct is to fix everything outside, control people, chase success, demand certainty. But the tablet whispers the opposite. Start within. As above, so below. Align your inner cosmos, and the external follows. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said almost the same. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Different words, same law. Isn't it striking that philosophy, mysticism, and science all circle back to this one idea? And yet there is a tension that remains. If the law is so universal, why do so few live by it? Perhaps because it is both empowering and terrifying. Empowering because it means you have more influence over reality than you think. Terrifying because it removes excuses. You cannot blame only the world above if your below is neglected. The tablet doesn't let us hide. It reveals that transformation is possible, but only if we dare to mirror the divine order within. So the next time you hear, "as above, so below," don't dismiss it as mystical poetry. Hear it as a call, a challenge to examine your inner world with the same seriousness you examine the stars. Because if the two are mirrors, then in studying one you hold the key to the other. And that is why those words changed philosophy forever. When Carl Jung analyzed the dreams of thousands of patients, he noticed something uncanny. The same images, the same symbols kept reappearing: a serpent biting its own tail, a marriage of sun and moon, a hidden treasure buried in the dark. Jung realized these weren't random. They were archetypes, ancient patterns of the human psyche. And many of them, almost word for word, are found in the mysterious sentences of the Emerald Tablet. This is why Jung believed the tablet wasn't just a relic of alchemy, but a mirror of the human unconscious itself. Its language is symbolic, and symbols, unlike words, reach into places logic can't. They bypass reason and strike directly at the soul. The Emerald Tablet does not explain in plain terms. Instead, it speaks in riddles. That which is below is like that which is above. And as all things were from one, so all things are born from this one thing. On the surface, this is confusing, but the very confusion is intentional. The tablet was designed like a code, meant only for those willing to wrestle with it. If you skim over it, you miss everything. If you sit with it, suddenly entire layers of meaning unfold. Just as an alchemist looked at metals not only as substances, but as symbols of the soul, we are invited to see beyond appearances. Lead is not just lead, it is fear, ignorance, heaviness. Gold is not just metal, it is clarity, consciousness, illumination. But why symbols? Why not speak clearly? Here's the paradox. Truth that is too direct often becomes invisible. Our defenses, our routines block it out. But when truth comes in symbolic form, it bypasses those defenses. Think of it. A simple phrase like "turn lead into gold" may sound like chemistry, but once you grasp the symbolic key, it becomes a blueprint for inner transformation. And when we look at history, we see how powerful this symbolic code has been. During the Middle Ages, Christian mystics interpreted the tablet as a hidden gospel. Renaissance alchemists read it as a scientific formula. Jung reinterpreted it as the process of individuation. Each era decoded the same words through its own lens, and yet the core remained timeless. Take the symbol of the sun and moon. In alchemy, their union represents the marriage of opposites, the rational and the intuitive, the masculine and the feminine, the conscious and the unconscious. The tablet insists that wholeness comes not from rejecting one side, but from uniting both. Modern psychology echoes this. Carl Rogers, the father of humanistic psychology, argued that healing comes when we embrace the rejected parts of ourselves. The tablet said it centuries earlier in symbolic form. Or consider the serpent biting its tail, the Ouroboros. While the tablet doesn't name it directly, its teachings echo the same principle. Everything returns to its source, the cycle of creation and destruction, life feeding on itself. Today, ecologists describe ecosystems in almost identical terms, cycles where nothing is wasted, everything transforms. The symbol already knew what science would later prove. What makes symbols so powerful is their universality. A farmer in ancient Egypt and a physicist today can both understand the image of the sun rising. It speaks without translation. That's why the tablet survives. If it had been written as a technical manual, it would have been forgotten centuries ago. Instead, it encoded wisdom in pictures and metaphors that the human soul never stops dreaming. Now ask yourself, why do you dream in symbols? Why does your unconscious choose strange, surreal images instead of giving you direct advice? The tablet suggests the same reason. It is the only language deep enough to hold paradox. Life is not linear, and truth is not simple. It takes images, mirrors, contradictions to express it. Just as in your own life, where joy hides in grief and strength hides in vulnerability, the tablet speaks in riddles because reality itself is a riddle. And here is the challenge. To unlock the tablet, you can't just read it like a book. You must live it, embody its code. When it speaks of ascending and descending, it is talking about the rise and fall of your emotions, your thoughts, your failures and victories. When it says, its force is entire if it be converted into earth, it is reminding you that spiritual insight means nothing if it doesn't ground into daily life. Every symbol has two edges, mystical inspiration and practical application. Ignore one and you miss the whole. The alchemists knew this. They labored in smoky laboratories, mixing chemicals not only to experiment, but to meditate. Every flask, every fire, every transformation of liquid to vapor was both a physical and a psychological experiment. They were training their minds through the symbolic language of matter, and the tablet was their guide, their map of meaning. So the next time you hear its cryptic words, don't dismiss them as outdated. Hear them as a symbolic key, waiting for you to turn it. Because once you learn the language of symbols, you realize the tablet was never talking only about metals. It was always talking about you. When modern people hear the word alchemy, they usually picture medieval men in robes trying to turn lead into gold. It sounds almost childish, a failed attempt at chemistry. But what if that wasn't the point at all? What if the transformation of matter was always a mirror of the transformation of self? The Emerald Tablet suggests exactly that. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. At first glance, it sounds like lab instructions, but pause. What if it is also talking about you, about separating the heavy parts of your soul from the subtle, refining what is dense in you into something luminous? Suddenly, alchemy isn't about gold locked in vaults. It's about the gold of consciousness. Look at history. Nicolas Flamel, the legendary French alchemist of the 14th century, became famous because he was rumored to have discovered the secret of the tablet. After his death, witnesses claimed his tomb was empty, his wealth inexplicable, his transformation complete. Whether these stories are myth or fact, they reveal something deeper. People believed in the possibility of total transformation, not just of metals, but of destiny itself. Jung explained this belief as projection. People externalized their longing for inner change by imagining it in metals. But isn't that exactly the point? Alchemy was both. To change matter was to practice changing oneself. And here's where the tablet becomes practical for you. How often do you feel heavy, stuck, weighed down by habits, fears, doubts? That heaviness is your lead. And what happens if you do nothing? The heaviness hardens, just like untreated metal. But if you expose it to fire, symbolic fire, the fire of awareness, discipline, insight, it begins to separate. What is subtle rises. What is impure burns away. This is not just metaphorical. Neuroscience today shows us that when you practice meditation, gratitude, or deep reflection, your brain literally rewires. Neurons that once fired in fear and anxiety weaken, while new pathways of clarity and resilience strengthen. The alchemists didn't have MRI machines, but they knew this truth through symbols. The tablet insists that all things rise from one, matter, energy, spirit, different faces of the same source. So when you transform one, you touch the other. Think of water. You can freeze it into ice, boil it into vapor, or drink it as liquid. Different states, same essence. Alchemy saw the human soul the same way. Trauma, despair, confusion are frozen states. But apply fire, apply patience, and they shift. The Emerald Tablet tells us transformation is not impossible. It is law. Everything can change because everything is connected. But there's a tension here. If transformation is natural, why does it feel so hard? Because, as the tablet warns, it must be done gently and with great ingenuity. Force doesn't work. Denying your shadow, repressing your anger, pretending your fear doesn't exist, this only makes the lead heavier. Transformation comes when you learn to separate, to observe without judgment, to refine. Jung called this individuation. The Stoics called it aligning with nature. The alchemists called it the great work. Different names, same process, you can see it in real lives. Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, entered prison as a man consumed by anger. But through reflection, patience, and resilience, he emerged with a spirit of reconciliation that transformed a nation. That is alchemy. Viktor Frankl, in The Horrors of Auschwitz, discovered that even when stripped of everything, man still has the freedom to choose his response. That choice, that spark of meaning, was the gold no oppressor could take. These are not metaphors. These are proofs that transformation of self is as real, as practical, as any laboratory experiment. The Emerald Tablet also warns us, its force is entire if it be converted into earth. That means insight alone is not enough. Transformation must ground itself in action. Otherwise, it evaporates like smoke. How many times have you had a brilliant realization, only to forget it a day later? That's ungrounded fire. To truly transmute, you must embody the insight, speak differently, act differently, live differently. The gold must shine in the world, not just in your mind. And maybe this is where you recognize yourself. You felt moments of clarity, glimpses of higher vision. But then life pulls you back into heaviness. The tablet whispers, don't despair. Every fall, every failure is part of the process. Lead is the beginning, not the end. Without lead, there is no gold. Without heaviness, there is nothing to refine. Transformation is not escape, it is engagement. It is learning to work with the raw material of your own life, just as an alchemist worked with fire, glass, and metals. So, when you hear the phrase, turning lead into gold, don't think of coins or treasure. Think of yourself. Think of the heaviness you carry and the fire you can apply. Because the alchemists were right, matter transforms, and so can you. In 1809, the German poet Goethe, who was also a scientist, confessed that the real secret of alchemy was not found in laboratories, but in the reconciliation of opposites. He wrote, "Everything comes into being through opposites, and only in overcoming them do we find truth." What Goethe was echoing, knowingly or not, was the very heart of the Emerald Tablet. The tablet insists that the great work, the magnum opus, is about unity, about merging what seems irreconcilable, sun and moon, above and below, spirit and matter, light and shadow. We don't need to look far to see how this applies to us. Every human being feels torn between contradictions. You want to be strong, yet you long to be vulnerable. You crave freedom, yet you fear being alone. You chase success, but secretly yearn for simplicity. These polarities are not mistakes. The Emerald Tablet teaches that they are the raw material of transformation. Just as an alchemist needed both fire and water, both dissolving and solidifying, we need the tension of opposites to awaken the gold within us. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He described the unconscious as a repository of everything we reject, our shadow. And he argued that wholeness comes not from erasing the shadow, but from embracing it, integrating it into consciousness. In his famous Red Book, Jung even dialogued with the figures of his own psyche, confronting terrifying images that most of us would rather avoid. He called this process the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. And when Jung read the Emerald Tablet, he found the same formula written centuries earlier. It rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, and receives the power of the above and the below. The tablet was describing the same cycle, integrating the opposites until they become one. But why is this so important? Because without integration, opposites destroy us. Think of someone who represses their anger until it explodes uncontrollably, or someone who clings to rationality and denies their emotions, only to fall into depression, or someone who embraces only pleasure and rejects discipline and ends up enslaved by addictions. The alchemists knew this. If you refuse to work with both fire and water, the experiment fails. If you refuse to work with both light and shadow, your soul fractures. The tablet challenges us to go beyond this fracture. It whispers that truth is never in extremes but in synthesis. Its power is perfected if it is turned into earth. That line tells us, spiritual insight must embrace material life, not reject it. Mystics who deny the body, businessmen who deny the spirit, both are unbalanced. Only when heaven descends into earth and earth rises into heaven does transformation become complete. Science again curiously confirms this. Physicists speak of wave-particle duality. Light behaves both as a particle and a wave, not one or the other, both. Psychology shows us that resilience is not about eliminating vulnerability, but balancing it with strength. Even in politics, progress comes not from one extreme dominating the other, but from dialogue, however fragile. Everywhere we look, the law of opposites unfolds. The tablet did not invent it, it revealed it. Now ask yourself, what opposites are you denying in your life? Do you hide your sensitivity because you think it makes you weak? Do you suppress your ambition because you fear it makes you selfish? Do you cling to control because surrender terrifies you? These are your sun and moon, and like the alchemists, your work is not to choose one but to unite them. History offers examples of those who succeeded. Mahatma Gandhi was both fiercely disciplined and profoundly gentle. Martin Luther King Jr. combined righteous anger with unconditional love. Leonardo da Vinci fused art and science, imagination and precision. These figures shine because they reconciled opposites. They lived the principle the tablet encoded, and yet the process is never comfortable. Unity of opposites demands that you step into contradictions. It means admitting that you are both fragile and strong, both selfish and generous, both shadow and light. It feels like a paradox because it is one. The tablet doesn't promise comfort. It promises transformation. So when you hear its cryptic lines about ascent and descent, above and below, don't dismiss them as poetic flourishes. Hear them as instructions. You cannot rise without also descending. You cannot embrace light without also holding shadow. The opposites you fear are not obstacles. They are the keys, because only when they meet, when the sun marries the moon, when heaven descends into earth, does the true gold appear. And that gold, the tablet insists, is not out there. It is the unity waiting within you. In 1926, the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung admitted something that startled his colleagues. He said that the real work of alchemy was never about metals. It was about the human soul. He called the goal of this work the discovery of the inner gold. Not coins, not treasure, but a state of wholeness, clarity, and spiritual radiance. The Emerald Tablet hinted at this long before psychology even existed. Its cryptic lines spoke of rising and descending, of separating and uniting, of refining until perfection. For Jung, these were not chemical recipes, but psychological instructions, and for us today, they might be more relevant than ever. The tablet speaks of, the father of it is the sun, the mother of it is the moon. This is a symbolic way of describing the union of opposites within the human being. When you bring together your rational side and your intuitive side, your conscious choices and your unconscious drives, your masculine and feminine energies, something new is born. The alchemist called it the Philosopher's Stone. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. And you may feel this in your own life. Whenever you reconcile inner conflict, whenever you stop fighting yourself and allow your contradictions to integrate, you feel lighter, stronger, more alive. That is a glimpse of inner gold. But how do we reach it? The tablet gives a clue. It rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth. This rising and descending describes a cycle. In psychology, it is the journey into the unconscious and back. You descend into your fears, your memories, your traumas. You face what you've avoided. Then you rise again, carrying insights that transform your daily life. Viktor Frankl, surviving the nightmare of Auschwitz, described this process in his own way. He descended into unimaginable suffering, yet emerged with a philosophy of meaning that still transforms millions today. His inner gold was forged in fire. Spiritual traditions echo the same path. In Christianity, the cross and resurrection symbolize descent and ascent. In Buddhism, the descent into suffering and ignorance precedes awakening. In Sufism, the burning away of the ego reveals divine love. Everywhere, the formula repeats. The Emerald Tablet is simply one of the earliest and clearest expressions. You cannot ascend without first descending, and you cannot find gold without first facing the lead. And science, too, points toward this. Neuroscience shows us that confronting painful memories, rather than avoiding them, rewires the brain. Psychologists speak of post-traumatic growth, where individuals who endure hardship often emerge with greater strength, deeper relationships, and a renewed sense of purpose. The fire that destroys also refines. The tablet was right. Transformation is not escape, but engagement. You may recognize this in your own story. Perhaps you've endured heartbreak, failure, illness, or betrayal. And maybe in those moments, you felt only the weight of lead. But notice what happens when you stay with it. When you reflect, when you extract meaning from the pain, slowly, the heaviness shifts. A new clarity appears. You see who your true friends are. You understand what really matters. You discover strength you didn't know you had. That is alchemy in its purest form. Your suffering becomes the furnace and your soul becomes the gold. The tablet insists. Its force is entire if it be converted into earth. Inner gold is not meant to stay hidden in meditation or private reflection. It must ground itself into daily life. If you've discovered resilience, live it in your work. If you've learned compassion, show it in your relationships. If you've touched transcendence, let it shape your choices. Otherwise, the insight evaporates. Alchemy demands embodiment. Gold that stays locked away is wasted. Gold that circulates transforms the world. This is why the path of inner gold is never solitary. The alchemists worked in secret, but their discoveries fed entire traditions of medicine, philosophy, and art. Jung worked with symbols in his study, but his insights gave millions tools for healing. Every step you take toward wholeness doesn't just serve you, it serves everyone around you. Because when you shine, you invite others to shine too. And perhaps that is the greatest secret of the tablet. The Philosopher's Stone is not a rock or a substance. It is the realization that the gold you sought outside was always inside. That every descent and ascent, every union of opposites, every moment of fire and refinement was pointing you back to yourself. Not the fragmented self you tolerate, but the whole self you are becoming. That is the gold. That is the treasure no one can steal. In 2008, scientists mapped the structure of the universe with unprecedented precision. What they found stunned them. The cosmic web, the vast network of galaxies, looked strikingly similar to the structure of neurons in the human brain. Two realities separated by unimaginable scale, yet almost identical in design. To the modern mind, this is coincidence. To the ancient authors of the Emerald Tablet, this was law. As above, so below. And suddenly, we realize that the tablet is not a dusty artifact of mysticism. It is a living text that still speaks to our lives, our science, our struggles, and our longing for meaning. So how does the tablet speak to us today? First, it tells us that change is possible. In an age where so many feel trapped in jobs they hate, in relationships that wound, in systems that suffocate, the tablet insists that nothing is fixed. Lead can become gold, chaos can become order, shadow can become light. But only if we engage with the process. This is not about passively waiting for miracles. It is about doing the inner work, applying the fire of awareness, the discipline of practice, the courage to face our shadows. Second, the tablet reminds us of unity. Modern life fragments us. Work is one identity, family another, online another still. We feel pulled in 1,000 directions, never whole. The tablet whispers that wholeness is not something you find outside. It is something you forge inside. Integrating your contradictions, reconciling opposites, grounding insight into action. Jung called this individuation. Today we might call it authenticity, but the principle is the same. To live as one integrated being instead of a fractured self. Third, the tablet insists on responsibility. If the outer world reflects the inner, then the chaos we see in society mirrors the chaos within us. Wars, corruption, ecological destruction. These are not just political failures. They are also spiritual failures. The alchemist's work was always personal and collective at once. By refining himself, he believed he was refining the world. Imagine if we lived this truth today. Imagine if every act of self-mastery, every healed wound, every reconciled shadow was understood as a contribution to the healing of the whole. Wouldn't that change the way we see our choices, our habits, our relationships? And finally, the tablet speaks to our hunger for mystery. We live in an age of data, algorithms, endless information. Yet with all our knowledge, people feel more lost, more anxious, more fragmented. The tablet reminds us that mystery is not an obstacle, it is the path itself. Its cryptic sentences force us to question, to wrestle, to search. And in searching, we are transformed. Mystery is not ignorance, it is depth. It is what keeps us alive, curious, humble. Think of the people who have lived by these truths. Newton, working by candlelight, saw in the tablet a map of universal law. Jung, listening to his patients, saw in it the key to the unconscious. Even modern physicists, though they may not admit it, keep stumbling on its principles in quantum entanglement, fractals, and cosmic symmetry. These are not random echoes. They are confirmations that the wisdom of the tablet is woven into reality itself. But the final question is this: what does it mean for you? The tablet has survived for centuries because it does not give answers, it gives principles. It doesn't hand you gold. It gives you the furnace and asks you to enter. It doesn't solve your contradictions. It tells you to reconcile them. It doesn't erase your shadow. It tells you to embrace it until it becomes light. In other words, it places the responsibility back into your hands. You may feel that your life is too heavy, too broken, too complicated to transform. The tablet says, start with the lead you have. You may feel that your inner conflicts are irreconcilable. The tablet says, marry your sun and moon. You may feel that the world outside is too chaotic to ever reflect harmony. The tablet says, create harmony within and the reflection will come. From ancient Egypt to medieval Europe to the modern mind, the tablet has traveled not because it promised magic tricks, but because it promised transformation. Transformation of matter, of mind, of spirit. And in an age where we have everything but still feel empty, its voice is perhaps clearer than ever. So when you hear its timeless words, don't think of them as distant relics. Hear them as if they were spoken to you now in this moment, because they are. The Emerald Tablet is not a text you read once, it is a mirror. Each time you return, it reflects who you are becoming. And that, in the end, may be the greatest secret of all. The tablet survives because it lives in you. In